Welcome to Politics News Wolf US channel. Putin's army, which he trusted so much in the war in Ukraine, was defeated by the Huk soldiers of Ukraine. Since February 2022, the Russian army is claimed to have lost more than 200,000 soldiers. Among these lost soldiers are the elite soldiers whom Russian leader Putin trusted very much. Putin's elite contingent of 5,000 saviors was almost completely destroyed in a single war with Ukraine. According to Ukrainian military sources, Russia has suffered some of the heaviest military losses in a single battle since the start of the war. Elite Russian units made several unsuccessful attempts to capture a fortified coal mining town in Wlask in a broad daylight, inflicting heavy military losses for Russia. Ukrainian officials reported that a significant number of enemy soldiers were killed, wounded, and captured during the war, and a 5,000-man naval brigade was almost completely destroyed for the third time, since the sorrow of a full-scale invasion of the Kremlin nearly a year. Russian conservatives demanded open persecution of the incompetent generals responsible for what turned out to be the massacre of dear soldiers on a battlefield, resulting in significant losses in the war and the destruction of at least 130 armored vehicles. Some of these generals are complete idiots. In the words of Igor Geek, a former Russian intelligence officer who participated in the pro-Moscow uprisings in Donetsk and Crimea, make the same mistakes over and over. Kin rebuked the Ukrainian military for holding high positions that allowed them to shoot Russian men like turkeys on a shooting. The latest attempt to capture Wledar began in late January when SPNA special forces armed IANs and infantry units launched attacks from different directions. However, the SPSNAS commander was killed in a setback that was premature for the Russians. Wledar, a mining town located high up near the only rail link between Crimea and Donetsk, was fortified with artillery after surviving the previous 3 months of. The heaviest attacks occurred last week, causing numerous NAV casualties, according to URNES outlet that closed the monitors developments in the. According to Gui Nazare, a spokesman for one of the Ukrainian troops defending the town. Russian movements were easily detected from the high-rise buildings as the defenders advanced towards the city from open spaces, as they had higher ground. Meanwhile, Russian forces have reached outside Parkman and at least 5 civilians have been killed and as many injured in the last 24 hours in Wharton nationwide operations, the Ukrainian presidential office said on. The presidential office said this in Paris. COA, northern suburb of Bakhmut, was difficult with Russian forces continuing to pound area with intense bombardment and storm actions. By the way, we are living in a day where the promises of weapons and military equipment given to the Ukraine army come true, German Defense Ministry spokesperson Nadine Kruger said in a statement in Berlin that Ukrainian soldiers have started training on Leopard 2 battle tank. Germany has promised to deliver 14 tanks to Ukraine by the end of March. There is a voice from the Chechen leader, Kadyrov, who has been at the forefront since February as an ally of Russian leader Putin in the war in Ukraine. Kadyrov, who had been silent enough to adopt his existence for a long time, returned to the field. Ramazan Kadyrov, allegedly at risk of burning in Putin. Leader Ram Kadyrov maintained close ties with Vladimir Putin, which has been likened to a father-son relationship. Kadyrov has made enemies in Russia's security and intelligence services. Chechen fighters are known to be involved in the Ukrainian war, but they're fighting for both Moscow and Kyiv. And now Kadyrov faces an uncertain future. Ramadan Kadyrov does not hesitate to call himself Vladimir Putin's infantry. After nearly 2 decades of relationship between the leaders, the Chechen dictator was quick to weigh in on the Kremlin's attempt to conquer Ukraine as Russian soldiers flocked across the. Shortly after the invasion began, Kadyrov promised the Chechen fighters to support Russia's forces and expressed his wish that they will prove themselves worthy. Moscow's dominance over the Chechen leader is not without reservations. Kadyrov outspokenly criticized Russian military leadership in the Ukrainian war. However, regional outlets in the region like Chechen have become part of the system and see their future with regime. Russian expert Denis Solo previously told Foreign Policy. This was not always the case in 1991, as the Soviet Union shattered Chechen declared its independence from the Moscow To briefly step away from the turbulent Kremlin leadership of the early 19th struggling with violence, Chechen saw a glimpse of de facto independence in the mid-90s before the start of the Second Chechen War, just before the mill. During the pouring years of the early 21st century, newly elected Putin put Kiev back in Moscow. But as the war in Ukraine continues, the feature of the one separate republic and the one's opposition leader may once again be up for debate with potential terminals, consequences for Russia, the region, and the rest of the world. The Karo and Putin relationship is one of the most important in the Russian Federation. Miki. Alex, a professor of political science at San Diego State University, told Nevi, Putin and Kadyrov have known each other for years, and Putin met with Kadyrov after the death of his father. Ahate Kadyrov, a former Chechen leader in 2004. Both father and son had made separatist voices before they switched sides and pledged allegiance to Moscow. Lan, associate professor of political science at Charles University in Prague, told NISA that Putin and Kadyrov have a father-son relationship just like Belarus dictator, Alexander Lukashenko. Kadyrov's speech. Faith is directly connected with Putin, according to Terekhio, a professor of political science at the National University of Kiev Academy. If Putin's leadership comes to, and for any reason the academic, I have no way of seeing how Kadyrov and Lukashenko will remain in their posts. You edited that. Kadyrov may have already made preparations for this, including some kind of exit strategy, but experts stress that what keeps Kadyrov in place is the perceived strength of Putin's personal leadership. You noted that putting signs of weakness will make Kutov's position increasingly. Adding that any indication that the Russian leader is on his way to departure will lead to a several paranoia for Kadyrov. Alex nevertheless explained that this relationship is not intimacy. Rather, a sense of interdependence in which both Kremlin and Kadyrov have much fear from each other. At the moment, experts say Putin is standing in the way of the enemies. Karo feeds in the Russian security services, Russian Federal Security Service, and Russian intelligence services. Alex added that Kao's relationship with Putin allowed him to supplement or override federal institutions, essentially giving the Chechen dictator a full authority that made him a more powerful than other Russian regional leaders, according to Holland. I expect Karo states to be numbered without Putin. In fact, he edited that Kao's main trade is likely to come from Russia's own security services. An arrogant leader who has a very special relationship with Putin. Karo has alienated Russian law enforcement and created very strong, very powerful enemies within Russian security. Alex stressed that Putin has poured enormous funds into Karachigani. The capital of Chia was in ruins at the turn of the century, but now as skyscrapers, he added last year. Karo reportedly admitted that Xi will quickly struggle without a steady flow of cash from Moscow, according to the Russian independent agency. Karo said, I swear God, we won't be able to hold out for 3 months or even a. Xi survives on substantial financial aid from Moscow. One estimate quoted in 2011 said that about 90% of Xi's finances came from Russian capital. Alex suggested that if Karo felt that heavy subsidies were coming to an end, or that the Russian economy could no longer sustain them, Karo could recalculate interest rates. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching the video. If you find it useful, please comment and share the video for us. It will make our channel more known. See you in the following videos. Thank you very much.